This is the second problem in your probability review for the final exam. So read the question first before you play the video. So we have 35% of the clinical group with hypertension. So let's call that H. 40% diabetes. So let's call that event D. And 10% have both, which means they have both H and D. So before you do anything else in probability, write down all the probabilities that are given to you in the problem. So in the exact same form as you see here, like an equation. So P of H equals 0.35, P of D equals 0.40. So P of H and D equals 10%, which is 0.10. So we've converted everything to decimals. H for hypertension, so D for diabetes, and H and D is for both. Now, once you've written that down, you have everything you need to plug into your formulas if necessary. So the first question says, what is the probability that a randomly selected person in the group has hypertension? So as I'm reading it, I'm taking notes, has hypertension, knowing that the symbol for knowing that is a vertical line. The person also has diabetes. So what is the probability that a person has hypertension given that or knowing that the person also has diabetes? So it's very important to write down what is being asked, the probability that you're being asked to calculate in mathematical notation first. After that point, all you need to do is use formulas. So what is P of H given D? So the way the formula works is you have a numerator and a denominator. The numerator has probability of both, which is probability of H and D, divided by the probability of the second event or the given event. So just follow the same pattern for any sort of conditional probability for which you have to use the formula. So probability of both in the numerator and probability of the second one in the denominator. So probability of H and D divided by probability of D. Now remember that probability of H and D is given to us. So we do not need to figure this out. If it's given to us, this is where some students are confused. If it's given to us, we don't need to use the AND formula. So just plug in the 10%, which is 0.10, divided by probability of D, which is 0.40, that is also given to us. And the final answer, you can use your calculator and figure it out. So what we've just calculated is the probability that a person in the clinical group has hypertension when we know that. So knowing something about this person, that is, we know that the person has diabetes, is 25%. Now the second question is asking you if having diabetes, which is D, and having hypertension, which is H, are disjoint. Now remember what the definition of disjoint events is. Events are disjoint if they cannot happen together. Now in this case, we are given that P of H and D is 10%, 0.10. So there is a probability that a person has both, which means the two events, diabetes and hypertension, can occur together in one person. So our conclusion is that the two events are not disjoint, which means they can happen together. So can happen together or can happen simultaneously. Now the next question says, what is the probability or what percent of the population has neither diabetes nor hypertension? So we've seen that having diabetes, which is D, and having hypertension are not disjoint, which means there is an overlap, right? And it is possible that there are people who have neither one of these problems. So we need to find the probability of either having probability or, so this whole shaded area including the overlap is diabetes or hypertension, which means we have to find the probability of uh, a person from the clinical population having diabetes or hypertension and then subtracting that from 1 to get the probability of someone not having any one of these two problems. So our first task is to figure out probability of D or H. Remember, the word or includes the overlap. The only reason why this formula subtracts the overlap is because the overlap is counted as part of diabetes group and the overlap is counted again as part of the hypertension group. So we need to eliminate the double counting of that one overlap by subtracting one of these, P of D and H. But anyway, this formula will be given to you. If you know that two events are overlapping or not disjoint, then you need to use the addition rule that takes care of the double counting of the overlap. So just copy this formula for events that are not disjoint, and then after that point all you have to do is plug in the numbers just the way they're given to us. What's the probability that someone has diabetes? It's 40%. What's the probability that someone has hypertension? It's 35%. What is the probability that they have both? Remember, this is both. So that is equal to 0.40 plus 0.35 minus 0.10 equals 0.65. So this number gives us the probability that a person has either diabetes or hypertension, which, remember, includes the overlap, which means it is possible that they have both. Now, what is the probability? So this is the second step to completing the problem. What is the probability that a person has neither diabetes nor hypertension? It's equal to 1 minus the opposite, which is probability of diabetes or hypertension. We've already calculated that. We just plug that in, and that is the probability. That is 0.35 is the probability that a person has neither diabetes nor hypertension, which is nothing, doesn't have any problem. Now, it's possible that a question could just ask you to find P of D or H. It's going to be pretty clean because all you have to do is copy the formula for overlapping events. It's the addition rule, or goes with addition. It's the addition rule, and then if you've written down your probabilities at the beginning of the problem, then all you have to do is plug them in.